and upon doing so, my agency will not be conducting any interviews or answering any questions on the matter. On behalf of the men and women of the Frederick Police Department, I would like to thank our fellow law enforcement agencies, the countless citizens, and all those who contributed to this tireless investigation. It was a combined effort in serving justice today. In the names of Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico, today I am proud of the determination that was put forth by all those who worked with us on putting this man away. His deplorable actions were fought back vigorously by honest police work, coupled with the goodwill of caring and loving people. But most importantly, however, I want to send our thoughts and prayers to Frank, Sandy, Frankie Jr., and the entire Rissick family. I don't know if you will ever receive closure on this horrific act of evil. I just pray that our efforts have brought you all one step closer in doing so. Thank you.
As you all, I'm sure, are aware, the defendant in this case this morning was sentenced to 3 consecutive life sentences, plus a 48-year sentence for the unlawful termination of a pregnancy as it relates to Nico Watts. He was also sentenced to 12 years on each of the 3 Class 3 felonies for unlawful tampering with a deceased body, those being Shanann, Bella, and Celeste. All of those counts ran consecutively for a total of 3 consecutive life sentences plus 84 years in the Department of Corrections. This afternoon, with the cooperation of the Weld County coroner, the autopsy reports will be made available and become a public document. There are a few things that I want to talk about that you will see that are contained within those autopsy reports. I'm going to be very general at this point. I hope you understand, out of respect for the Rissick family who is still present. Part of the reason that we kept these sealed were for the following reasons. You will see in the autopsy report of Shanann Watts that forensic toxicology testing indicated that in spleen blood there was a blood alcohol level of 0.128. I want to be abundantly and very, very clear about this. This does not mean that she consumed alcohol, nor that she was intoxicated. We have consulted with the Weld County Coroner's Office. We have conducted with the forensic experts at the Colorado Bureau of Investigation. To a person, they have all indicated to us that that blood alcohol level is very, very consistent with normal human decomposition based upon the location and the manner that Shanann and Nico's bodies were buried. Secondly, you will see in the autopsy reports of Bella and Celeste a number of different substances, I think is probably the way, Mr. Blesh, that I want to address those. We have had those examined by both expert chemists as well as the coroner's office because we wanted to make sure that all of those substances could be attributed to the crude oil and the water that their bodies were found in and nothing more. The forensic experts confirmed for us that all of the substances found in those toxicology reports are consistent with being submerged in unrefined crude oil. Mr. Blesh, any other comments you want to make about that at this point?
Covered it well, sir.
Thank you. Other than that, I'm happy to take questions. Obviously, from our perspective, justice was more than served this morning. The defendant is now headed exactly where he belongs, which is a life sentence in prison without the possibility of parole. So I'm happy to take questions.
Can you shed some light on the paroles which were killed?
I'll certainly call upon Mr. Blesh. Also, what I can tell you is that because of a whole host of reasons, not the least of which is we're not operating in the CSI TV world, oftentimes we can't determine exactly when or a time frame for cause or time of death. Particularly, I think that was complicated by where all of the different bodies were found and the amount of time that passed before their remains were recovered.
I agree.
So how much time?
Well, we know that they were deposited in the locations where they were found in the early morning hours of August 13th. They were recovered on August 16th. That's the best I can tell you from a timing.
The girlfriend you referenced in court, can you give us a better idea of her role in the investigation, how forthcoming she was and how she helped?
She originally came forward and spoke to investigators on her own volition. Prior to the time, unfortunately, that she came in and spoke with investigators, she had deleted all of the information off of her phone that had any connection between her and Chris Watts. That hampered the investigation. That hampered our ability to get that electronic digital connection between the two. She was interviewed on multiple occasions. I believe that for the most part she was forthcoming in the course of those investigations. We don't have any reason to believe that she had any prior knowledge or involvement in the death of Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico. I think that's the best way I can answer that. Yes, sir.
You said that you were leaving the door open for Chris Watts to make a statement in the future and hopefully answer questions. What information is it that you're specifically looking for?
How and why? And I don't think he'll ever answer those questions. Like I said in the courtroom this morning, and I think that the Rusick family said it very, very well as well, I don't think he will ever tell us. I don't think he will give an honest assessment of why he did what he did, how he did what he did. I intentionally called upon him to see if he would answer those questions in the courtroom this morning. Both his mother and through their attorney, his father, said that they hope that he will be honest and come clean someday and give us an account of what happened, because I think, like I said this morning, those are the questions that will always haunt anyone who was involved in the investigation, and I don't think that there is ever going to be a satisfactory answer for anyone, not the least of which is the Rusick family.
You mentioned several times in court that this was a deliberate act. Why do you believe it's a deliberate act? Do you believe he planned this before the night of to kill his family?
I don't have any information about any pre-planning or anything like that. Obviously, something like this, in my mind, doesn't just happen on the spur of the moment. But what I alluded to this morning, as it related specifically to Shanann, was the amount of time it takes for one human being to strangle another. And perhaps Mr. Blesh wants to comment on the timing as well. That demonstrates an incredible intent to cause someone's death. He did that 3 times. So to say that this was anything other than a deliberate, intentional killing is inaccurate, to say the least. Yes, sir.
You described Mrs. Watts as, it took a long time for her to die. Was there any defensive wounds on Mr. Watts, and can you have any evidence if she was asleep?
Take that.
He had one small mark on his neck that was observed the night he was originally interviewed. We don't know if that's related or not, but other than that, no. We had him photographed from head to toe that night, and nothing was observed that would be consistent with injuries to him as a result of a struggle.
Yeah, go ahead.
The original plea deal isn't the one you guys reached today, correct? Can you elaborate on what that would have been?
To be clear, there was only ever one plea deal, and that's the one that his attorneys brought to us. The deal, for lack of a better word, and I frankly despise that word, no offense, the agreement that was reached was he would plead guilty to every count we charged him with. In exchange, if he pled guilty to each and every count in the complaint information, we would not seek the death penalty. That was an offer brought to us by the defense. That's when, I've talked about this before, Mr. Wren and I felt compelled to get on a plane and go see the Rusicks in North Carolina, because that was a conversation that I was only going to have with them face to face. Go ahead, Carol.
There's a lot made about DNA on the little girl's neck. Now that we know they were smothered, did that ever come into play? DNA on their necks?
No, it didn't. Yeah. Sorry, I meant,
Oh, yeah.
yeah, we'll go back behind first.
There's a letter that's circulating around in social media that apparently Chris sent to his family a week prior to the murders, where he's saying, if anything happens to me or the girls, I would have never hurt my daughters. Is there anything to that? Is that legitimate? And it seems to me it shows that he was planning this at least a week ahead of time.
You're seeing a lot of puzzled looks up here because none of us have ever heard that. I've never seen that on social media. I confirmed just by the look on his face with Detective Baumover, we have never seen and nor heard of any such letter or its existence before. I'm sure that if it was in any way, shape, or form real, we would have heard about it. Go ahead.
When you were describing some of those very gruesome and horrific details, the judge himself even seemed to be a little bit emotional about that.
Right.
Can you talk to us about what that's like for you standing there and seeing him have that kind of reaction?
It's not something that I relished. Mr. Wren and I and Mr. Miller, the assistant DA, met at my house yesterday for several hours to talk through the comments that we wanted to make. and we all recognized that in order for the court to impose a just sentence, a fair sentence under the circumstances, that he had to know as much information as we could give him in a respectful fashion. Like I said, he had never read most of that. He had seen an affidavit which had some of the very preliminary information that Detective Baumover put on paper, but I felt like it was important for the judge to understand the horror that was involved in this case, even though in the end of the sentence, for the defendant, it's not going to matter if he gets 1 consecutive, 2 consecutive, 3 consecutive life sentences. It doesn't matter in the end what number is attached to the end of those. It certainly matters to the Rusick family. It certainly matters to law enforcement and to my office, and I hope it matters to the public. When we're saying, you know what, there is a sentence that was imposed today that is reflective of the actions he took as to each and every one of his victims. Yeah, go ahead.
If I'm remembering correctly, you all searched the location where the bodies were found before Mr. Watts had admitted to you all. How did you determine the location of the bodies?
GPS.
How did you know where to look?
On his work truck, he had a GPS device that showed the path of travel that he took when he left his home that morning. It showed at various increments the time that it would have taken him to get to various spots. So the CBI, FBI, Frederick Police knew where he had gone immediately after leaving his home that morning, which caused some of the initial searches with drones and foot searches. Only after he gave us that information did they have a more specific place to look. Yeah.
Did he appear to text his coworker that he could take the morning shift before or after he murdered his son?
There were text messages on Sunday afternoon, a text message, I should say, between he and a coworker talking about the work schedule. The investigation that law enforcement conducted indicated that wasn't necessarily out of the ordinary, but in conjunction with everything else we know, became an important fact for us in his efforts to have time to dispose of the bodies in the manner in which he did. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I was just curious if during your investigation, if you guys found any evidence, anything suggesting that he'd have violent tendencies?
No.
Any mental problems or even low intelligence?
No, none of the above. Yeah, Kevin.
Sounds like from the statement of Mr. and Mrs. Watts that they may have met with you or people from your office over the weekend. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sure.
What you shared with them, what you talked about?
Mr. Wren met with him.
When the court issued its order recognizing them as victims under the Victim Bill of Rights, our office agreed to meet with them, and I met with them for several hours last night with their attorney that was present in the courtroom today and one of our victim witness assistants. We had what I consider to be a good conversation. It was awkward and tough in some respects for obvious reasons, but I think ultimately they wanted to know the facts that we knew, and they wanted to know what was going to come out today. And they felt like they had been deprived of that information, and so consistent with our obligations under the statute, I provided them with that information, and I think it changed their perspective a little bit on what was going to happen today.
As you know, a week ago they were questioning whether their son actually had done all of these things. Did you feel like this sort of brought them to a place in terms of how they were thinking about it?
I do. I think in the middle of that conversation, they came to a realization about the extent of the evidence that we had.